So my name is Tanja Johnson. I'm the founder and executive director of Beautifully Unblemished. It is truly an honor to moderate today's Patient Perspective panel. A big thank you to the FAD for your support. Today's conversation is more than a discussion about skin conditions. It is about identity, resilience, mental health, healing, and the human experience behind diagnoses that are often only seen from the surface. For many individuals living with visible or chronic skin conditions, the journey extends far beyond the symptoms. It can impact confidence, relationships, emotional well-being, daily functioning, and even how safe someone feels showing up in the world. Our goal today is to create a space rooted in honesty, compassion, vulnerability, and understanding, where patient voices are not only heard, but valued. I want to thank our incredible panelists for being willing to share their stories, truths, and lived experiences. Your courage has the power to educate providers, inspire patients, and create meaningful change. I also want to encourage our audience to listen with empathy. Sometimes the most important learning happens not through statistics or textbooks, but through personal stories. So let's begin. To start us off, can each of you briefly state your name, share your condition, and one thing that describes your journey so far? So I'm going to start with Katina.
Hi, my name is Katina Morrison. I am an HS advocate, and one word that would describe my journey is resilience.
Awesome. And we'll just go down the line if that's okay.
Hi, I'm Christina Kerp. I have hidradenitis suppurativa, and one thing that describes my journey is full circle.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Aaliyah Sawyer. I've been having vitiligo for 11 years, and I will say that my skin does not define me. It adds on to one's complexion and your beauty.
Love that. My name is Jarrett Brown. I have vitiligo. I've had it for 40 years. In one word, I would say it's just been change, constant, always changing.
Hello, everyone. I'm Janine Ford, and I have alopecia. I was diagnosed in 2017. One word that I think projects my journey is intentional, being intentional about the confidence that I show every day.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chiva Lines, and I live with atopic dermatitis, also known as eczema. I've had it my entire life. And one word that I would use to describe my journey is transformative.
Thank you for sharing. Awesome. So we're going to jump right into our panel, and we're going to talk about the topic that sometimes go unnoticed and untalked about, and that's the mental health impact of living with skin conditions. So Aaliyah, can you share a moment when your condition affected how you saw yourself?
Yes. I am 16 years old, and I will say when I was about in 8th grade, that's when I was finding myself, who I was as a person inside and out. And with social media being very active during that time, I compared myself to others, and I thought that I wasn't enough because of my skin. Vitiligo brought my self-esteem to the lowest at that point, and it was really hard trying to find myself going into high school as an 8th grader, like going into 9th grade. And it was honestly just a really hard moment, but vitiligo has really made me see who I am as a person, but at that time it was really, really hard.
Well, thank you for sharing, Aaliyah. And so I want to ask Janine, what are some internal battles people don't see?
I think for me, the internal battles are, I was the one that used to change my hair like every other week. African American women, we have different things that we can do with our hair every day. I think that internal battle is not being able to do that anymore. Seeing other women with these beautiful hairstyles. Of course, I know that you can purchase a wig, you can go and get non-surgical hair added, but for me, for myself, to have my own growing out of my pores, growing out of my head, and changing it to how I want, that is one internal battle that I deal with daily.
And I'm going to stay on that same question for Katina. what are some internal battles that people don't see with HS?
When living with HS, hidradenitis suppurativa, the internal battles that people don't see is how it affects your self-esteem, how it can at times affect your interpretation of self-worth, and because oftentimes while HS appears in areas that people don't see, like your underarms, your groin areas, for me, were the worst areas that it occurred in. It affected my ability to really connect with others and to really go out into the world. I think it was one of the things that made me an introvert, because I have a personality that is very extroverted when people come in contact with me, but the truth is, behind closed doors, because of the conditions that I live with, it has made me an introvert. But these are the things that people don't see.
Thank you. And so we all know that the mental health impact and the emotional impact it can be hard. I live with vitiligo. I'm 90% depigmented. And so I know the struggles of living with vitiligo. So Jared, I want to ask you, how has the condition impacted your mental health through anxiety, depression, your self-esteem?
So having vitiligo for as long as I've had it, I've had quite the journey. I came up in a time where we didn't have social media, so I didn't face the same challenges that Aaliyah has. However, I had the challenges that we didn't have information flowing as freely. So there wasn't a community for me. I was often the only person that I saw for a year who looked like me. Coming up, going to school, and we weren't in a time where we were celebrating people's differences. Every year, the first day of school, I had the challenge of being the different person. And every day when you wake up with a disease like vitiligo, you may be different than you were the day before. So that can take a real big challenge on your mental health. Speaking to the point that she just said, or Katina just said, I had the same thing where people think I'm tremendously extroverted. However, it made me very shy. I was afraid to approach people and talk to people. And what I found was a lot of times it wasn't that people were afraid of me. People were afraid to approach me because they didn't know how to approach me. As soon as I broke that ice, all bets were off. So it's been a constant battle, and it goes beyond that. Just to dovetail, there's also the challenge of insurance. Am I going to receive treatment for this? If I find a treatment that works, how much is it going to be covered, and what toll is that going to take for me to go back and forth to a derm, or how much is that going to cost? And it can be really challenging when you're exploring financial issues. You don't know what it's maybe excluding you because of other people's prejudices, whether it's friendship, work, relationships, etc., and then you don't know if you can get the care that you need. It can really, really take a toll on you.
Thank you. So, Chi, I want to ask, what does confidence look like for you now versus before your diagnosis?
I think for me, because I was born with eczema, I don't know a life without eczema. I've had to learn how to feel confident regardless of what stage my skin is in, and that has changed in every single space that I've been in. So when I was in school, that looked different. In my 20s, that looked different. And now in my 30s, I'm finding that I have to relearn and rebuild my confidence because I'm still dealing with flares, and it's frustrating. And some days, it's detrimental to my mental health. And so it's really, really tough to wake up and say, I feel good from the inside out when I look at myself, and it does not make me feel good. So just really learning and relearning and rebuilding that confidence, and really learning how to feel good regardless of what my skin is showing.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask this question because Katina was experiencing a flare today. And so I want to ask, how do you navigate when you're experiencing a flare and you have to come to an event like this, or you have to go to work? How do you navigate that?
It can be very challenging because what people don't know about hidradenitis suppurativa oftentimes is that when a person has that condition, they also have higher chances for other types of conditions, autoimmune conditions, et cetera. And with it being an auto-inflammatory condition, as it's described now, it can pop up at any time. And oftentimes when maybe when you're stressed, when you're not getting the sleep that you need, maybe it could be associated with your nutrition. Waking up this morning, I personally was experiencing a lot of brain fog. And then on top of that, I have to consider what type of clothes am I going to wear. I was initially going to wear a pantsuit, but instead I went with a dress so I don't have anything that is compressing those areas. So it changes your outlook on style. Then you also have to consider what things you have to put under your clothes in order to prevent, leakage, or also concern of potential odors and things like that. As a woman who lives with various conditions, including endometriosis, combine those two together, and you're often worrying about, do people smell me? Let me see, I can't wear white. So it was a challenging morning, but I was glad that I was able to make it here.
Well, thank you. We're glad you're here as well. So, thank you. Christina, I want to ask, how has your condition impacted relationship?
So hidradenitis suppurativa impacts not just intimate relationships, but any relationship, because you're not fully present, very much like Katina just explained. You're out with your friends, you're worried about if you're staining the chair or if they can smell, and the onset, for me, it was puberty, and so I have not known dating without it, which made me push people away. I like somebody, maybe they like me too, but then they're actually ask me out. I'm like, oh my God, absolutely not. I don't want to be alone with you. So it took a long time to, also when I was diagnosed in the early 1990s, I was told to lose weight and wash better. So that just the shame I already felt because I had boil-like abscesses in my groin area as a 13-year-old girl was now amplified by being essentially told that it's my fault and I'm gross. So I should bill that guy for therapy. And I think that, that's going to make you, again, you want to push away people, you can't really connect. It's always on your mind. HS, in everything that you do, you're working, you're dating, you're trying to go out, it's the number one thing you have to think about before you do anything. So well-managed disease, not so much. I've been in remission, but again, it still affects showing up here. What did I eat today? Because I manage with nutrition. So till this day, even though I don't have active flares, I'm still making constant choices to continue to manage my disease. And I think that mental load needs to be acknowledged.
Thank you. So we're going to move into the healthcare experience. And for all the doctors, interns, medical students that are in the room, we do appreciate what you do every day for patients. So I'm going to just throw this question out, and whoever wants to answer it, just start talking. Did you feel heard or understood by your healthcare provider? Why or why not? This is a very important question.
So many of us had conversations about this morning. I'll keep it simple because I know there's some deeper cases. I've been to no less than half a dozen derms, and the thing that I have found is it became very, very focused on the care that they provided in their office, and it was very a matter of fact. You have vitiligo, you're not going to die, this is what can happen. Here's a pamphlet, you can come to my office, we've got this machine, you can use it, we've got this other machine, but your insurance is going to cover it. Go see my receptionist, have a nice day. That's pretty much the spiel sped up between most derms that I've been to. I had one PA who actually asked me, how are you doing? She addressed the mental health aspect, the fact that there's deeper than skin, that this may be having a deeper impact on me. She told me about not only the treatments they had available, but she also gave me options and said, you don't have to do all these, you don't have to do any of these. There's also some treatments I don't have, and let me tell you about some stuff that I just heard at this awesome event that I was at, an event just like this, that may be coming down the pipeline. So she offered a pipeline of hope, understanding she made me part of my care team, which makes me more likely to be compliant with my treatment, which is going to lower my stress level, which is also, my stress is not going to fight my condition. So it really did come full circle and help out quite a bit.
I think I had an interesting experience where I saw an HS expert very late in my journey, like literally just in the last few years. So most of my life and I grew up in Miami, so literally all the dermatologists ever down there. But I had not seen someone who was a specialist in HS, and that experience changed my outlook totally on medical care. And I really wish that the derms that I saw earlier who did not specialize in HS would have referred me out to be like, hey, I can acknowledge this, I can diagnose it, but let me send you somewhere that's better equipped to treat you, because not having to explain the details of the disease, having people who understand and have a lot of different options and are specialists, that's a game changer. And I think everyone deserves to see a specialist in their diagnoses.
Thank you.
100%.
Yes, I agree, 100%. How important is it for providers to acknowledge the mental health side of skin conditions?
I feel that it's very important. You know, as I've been a registered nurse now for 20 years, and I saw from both sides of it as a patient and as a person who is living with chronic skin conditions. And oftentimes that is completely missed, the mental health aspect of things. I recall where he just said, you know, the provider simply asked him, how are you doing? And that had an impact. Oftentimes we don't get, how are you doing? It's, okay, I'm head down into your notes and on to the next thing. So that time to simply ask that question and allow space for a response is important. Or to really go down that PHQ-9, I believe that's what it is, PQ, the mental health assessments. Really look into what the answers are. Encourage your patients to really speak from their heart about their experiences. Just showing that you care can make a big difference. And then referrals to mental health providers is important.
Go on, Leah.
I think it's super important because I don't do treatment anymore. Not saying that I wouldn't, but at the time when I was, my dermatologists were almost learning about vitiligo while me and my mother were at the same time. And it got to a point that I felt like a lab rat, and that's why I stopped treatment, because they didn't ask about the mental, it was only about what they could cure.
So I'll jump in real quick because I understand that a lot of us like to stay in our lane. And I, once again, applaud you and thank you all for spending so many sleepless nights studying and taking the hard tests that I never did, because you all have knowledge not just about our diseases, but so many others. And I know that's a lot. I'm not asking anybody to become a mental health specialist as well, but the one thing that I would say that really has helped is finding community. It's something when you have other people that you can identify with, just like many of you all are identifying with other health professionals, and you have that commonality, you have that bond, even with strangers, that makes this an easier endeavor for you. You came from someplace new to a different place with a bunch of strangers, and now you have some commonality. Even saying something to the effect of, hey, this may be a lot for you to process, and I understand that. There's nothing wrong with wanting to see a therapist or seek out a support group in your area. I thought I was all alone, and I did not want to interact with really anybody or anything because I was kind of in denial. And when I thought support group, I thought I was just going to be crying about my feelings. Little did I know, I'd basically been recruited by this wonderful woman here to join a group of people who were living their best lives and that I could lean on for support, and they could lean on me for support. And it made my journey that much more helpful. So if you don't feel comfortable asking how you're doing, just say, hey, there's a group of people out there who can identify with you. And you don't have to keep a matrix of who, just say, hey, when you get home, Google search disease support group, city. I promise you something will come up.
I think there's an interesting, there's certain markers for success in a treatment which also are tied to mental health. And I think sometimes that's missed the mark. I know in a lot of clinical trials with HS, they go by nodule count. That's not what we're counting. When I'm like, oh, how am I doing? I'm thinking of my pain levels. I'm thinking about how many times I have to change my bed sheets, how many activities did I sit out on. So when you're communicating with the people that you're treating, sometimes it's not so much about, lesions or a number, but hey, you know, what activity were you able to do this in the past few months that you couldn't do before? Sometimes these mental health things, like these lifestyle improvements, those are greater to us, have more value to us than other markers that like clinical markers for success in treatment. So think about it that way as well. Like as our quality of life overall improves, like those are things that are important to us, especially when we're thinking of, is a treatment worth staying on or is it working?
Great point, Christina. And so it's a lot of times when we're in the doctor's office, they're on a time constraint. You know, there's time constraints. You get in, they got to get you in, get you out, and they got to see other patients. So I'm hoping that after today that we will take the time to ask the right questions, to get that feedback from your patient, because internally we're suffering. We're affected by our skin conditions. So I hope that after today, we will take the time to ask those important questions. And so we're going to move into a more personal part of our discussion. And so this is for Christina and Katina. How do you cope with the physical discomfort and the emotional toll all at the same time?
It's challenging to do that, especially as a person who also has to work full time. What many don't understand too is the aspect that it has in relationship to, we have needs, you know, that need to be met on a daily basis. And for those of us who have HS and other autoimmune conditions, you know, you have to be able to find a working condition where you can maintain the expenses of life, even your medications. For me, I just received a bill for $1,800. I saw a doctor one time, and the doctor for one office visit, and the doctor provided me one injection treatment in their office, and I received a bill for $1,800 because I hadn't met my deductible for the year. That's stress, because it's important that we have support in understanding how to navigate the medical system so that it doesn't stress you out to the point that you're having more flares than you need to. With the mental aspect of it, for many years, I was a person who suppressed things, and I put the needs and feelings of others ahead of me, and that only caused more pain for me, more illness. And navigating these things meant I needed to engage in therapy, and I didn't acknowledge that I needed therapy until I was 38, and now I'm 42. You know, being able to talk about what I'm experiencing, letting my family know, you didn't know how bad this was for me, but this is what I've actually been going through all this time, and then connecting with community.
Thank you. So I'm going to move to vitiligo. How has visibility of your condition shaped your identity and your self-image? Aaliyah?
Ladies first.
With a condition that's constantly changing, whether you like it or not, it's definitely a struggle on many aspects, especially when it hits the summertime, when you have to wear your short sleeves, your bathing suit, shorts, etc., and being a teenager all at once. Having spots that show up randomly can be a struggle because one day you don't see it and the next day you do. One day somebody comes up to you and says, your skin's beautiful. The next they're saying, why do you have that? What's that? Da, 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 da. So it's definitely a mental toll that spirals like crazy. Especially going to school. And my first day of school, I just moved to Florida. Going into a school that I've never been in, I don't know nobody. There was a lot of questions. There was a lot of stares. And that's what definitely made me take a step back, because I love my skin, I love who I am. But seeing everyone look at me differently was definitely a struggle. It was very hard. I didn't know whether to think, is my vitiligo pretty or not? And it was just, honestly, super hard.
Well, we're going to move to the next group because I'm going to try to stay
go
on
on.
time. So for atopic dermatitis, how do chronic itching, sleeping disruption, and flare-ups affect your emotional well-being?
The combination of that keeps my moods unstable. The instability of my moods because of the itch scratch cycle is very apparent. Also, I think the worst thing that you can do to tell someone who has eczema is to stop scratching. It is something that I've heard from a derm, and it is just very disheartening because there's times that we don't even know that we're scratching. There are times at night that I'm scratching myself until I'm oozing, and I wake up and I have no clue how it happened. And so the itch scratch cycle is something that is really, really hard for us to maintain. It's hard for us to manage. Sometimes we don't even know that it's happening. So it definitely causes mood instability. It causes anxiety, depression, and a combination of all of that affects your entire ecosystem.
Thank you for sharing. And for Janine, what has been your experience with visibility, whether to cover or not to cover?
With covering, I covered for a long time, and I'll be quick. I covered with the follicles. I did the little sprays in my head. They would last for a certain amount of time. Don't let it rain. They're clumpy, it's running down your face, things like that. I had this burgundy bandana that I still have in my closet because as soon as I got home, I know that wasn't gonna last all day, and I would cover it to prevent my husband from seeing it. So I was hiding from that until one day he was like, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of you and this burgundy bandana, So he's the one that encouraged me to shave my head, and to me, being uncovered has been it lifted me. It gave me that awe moment because here I am. Now I can walk in a different confidence. I can walk in my education. I can walk in my business. I can walk in being an author. It's not my hair anymore. It's me. So that helped me out to be uncovered. To me, I'm still covered, but covered in other areas. I didn't need my hair.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm always wondering because sometimes, we know as vitiligans, it's not painful for us, it's just we're spotted, but sometimes for like someone that has HS, it's very painful. For atopic dermatitis, this can be detrimental to you. So I'm thankful and grateful for you all sharing your stories today. And so before we move forward, I want to just sit in this moment. These were not just stories. They were lived experiences filled with pain, resilience, isolation, and strength. No chart or diagnosis can fully capture what it means to live in a body the world constantly questions or misunderstands. So the question becomes, what do we do with what we've heard today? Will we listen differently? Will we ask one more question? Will we truly see the human being sitting in front of us? Because beyond the surface, there is a story, a struggle, and a person asking to be seen. At this time, it is my honor to welcome Dr. Bonetta Hulaba, our clinical psychologist.
Good afternoon. All right, so the question is there a connection between skin disease and mental well-being? I think from the research and from the panelists, we can all say absolutely yes, right? So research is indicating that 1 in 3 patients who are seeking treatment for dermatology reasons are reporting some type of comorbid mood disorder. And so we're not talking about a little sadness, a little depression. We're not talking about just a little bit of worry. We're talking about clinical depression and clinical anxiety, moods that are so debilitating that it impacts their ability to function at work, at home, meet their basic responsibilities. So what does that actually look like? It looks like the inability to get to sleep, or if you're lucky enough to get to sleep, you wake up every couple hours, so you're never really fully rested. Maybe it looks like you can't really focus or concentrate. You're at work doing a task that you would normally be able to do well, but all of a sudden there's this mental brain fog that's happening that Katina talked about, right? And then it gets so severe that it includes even thoughts of death. right? So we've also talked about the impact on self-esteem. What does it mean to be able to show up in the world, but you are not the you that you've always known? So these skin conditions can take away a person's identity or change your identity without your permission. So the panelists talked about, they were mostly extroverted, but after this disease, they find themselves being more introverted. And that leads to grief. You're mourning who you saw yourself in the future. You're mourning how you see yourself now. And it can also lead quickly to a sense of isolation that no one understands. What don't people understand? They don't understand the symptoms. They just don't know. Or they don't understand the chronicity of the symptoms, right? So family might say, well, you're seeking treatment. You have a dermatologist. You're taking your medication. You're doing what they ask you to do. What's the problem? They don't understand that this is a lifelong journey. And even for patients who do have people in their corner to support them, they may find themselves pulling back because I don't want to be a burden to the people in my life who are supporting me. So it leads to isolation. Another thing to consider is the fact that it leads to great psychological pain. And if you've ever been a person who's experienced severe pain, one of the biggest fears is, one, that the pain is not going to end, and two, that this pain that is already unfathomable will somehow get worse. And so patients in serious pain can contemplate, how do I get out of pain? And when you're helpless, when you're hopeless and overwhelmed, when you don't see a lot of options, it could lead to thinking about ending your life. So just over 12% of patients with chronic dermatology skin disease, they are saying, hey, I'm thinking about ending my life. I'm so overwhelmed by this. So just like we try to escape physical pain, the same can be true for chronological pain. That is not uncommon. So the question is, what can you do as a provider? Number one, you're already in a role of authority. You are the expert in what people are just finding out about. So as an authority figure, you provide reassurance. You have the ability to provide compassion, and you have the ability to throw in a lifeline and say, hey, you're not alone. Let me to connect you to some help. So I'm going to give you 3 practical ways that you can assist patients. The first, I think, is one of the most obvious and one of the most powerful, which is listen. Take a moment and listen. And as we said before, I know that there are time constraints. So how can you demonstrate that you're listening? You listen with your whole body. You listen with your posture. You listen by saying something simple like, right? So how do you check in to know that you're listening? When your patient is done, towards the end of the session you have with them, can you identify what is the hardest part of this for them? Can you pick up on themes that they talked about? Is isolation a theme? Is shame a theme? What is the most significant thing for them? Can you summarize their concerns? When you're leaning forward, facing them, eye contact. So as a clinician, I know that I have to take notes, but there's a time where giving someone eye contact demonstrates more than saying, I hear you. I'm listening, just looking at them, making eye contact, leaning forward, nodding your head, giving those social cues of, yeah, I get what you're saying, makes a significant difference and can help alleviate some suffering. There was a study that was done that said within the first 11 to 12 seconds after a patient starts speaking, sometimes physicians interrupt and start talking themselves. 11 to 12 seconds. In the same study, they found when the patients were allowed to continue, they only talked for about 6 to 9 more seconds, just completing the thought that they had, that they'd begun, right? So it's giving time to those patients to speak. The second tip I would say is to connect to resources, right? How do you connect to resources? First, you have to know that there's a problem. There's an issue going on. So I think Katina mentioned it earlier. The PHQ-9 assesses for depression. The GAD-7 assesses for anxiety. Based on those scores, you know where to send your patients. Do they need a pamphlet on information? Do they need a support group? Do they need a therapist, or do they need to talk to a psychiatric provider? So those are a few screening instruments that you can do. So tip number 1 is listen with your whole self. Tip number 2 is actually assess for the issue. And then tip number 3 is connect. And I think Jared made a valid point. It's not as complicated and as overwhelming as you might first seem. It's go to google.com. type it in your search in whatever search engine you use, and type in, enter the skin condition, enter the zip code, and things will start to pop up. In your booklets, you have access to resources, so scan the QR codes. There are support groups that are available online. There are different referral sources like psychologytoday.com or whoever other resources that have made an opportunity for providers. You pay and you put your profile up there and say, hey, this is what I'm specializing in. So connect your patients to support. By doing this, you're telling them your overall well-being is important to me, and you're not in this alone. I am just one of the members on your team here to help you. Tanja?
Great information. So for some of you, you may not have the booklet, but there is a booklet at the end of some of the seats. And inside that booklet is our panelists, their bios, and on the back is a resource code that you can scan. It's a QR code that will link you to these wonderful patient advocates that are sitting here on the stage. So, as we end, thank you guys so much for participating today. And